welcome to episode 82 of my POA podcast, Black Hand and Beyond. Tonight's episode is the Kevin Jewell episode, and he's going to join us live in a few minutes here from Georgia. We're very honored to have him as a guest tonight. Of course, he's a well-known, renowned horse person who grew up in POAs. He's a POA alumni, so that's cool. We have a sponsor also from that part of the world tonight, TC POAs from Florida and TC Impulsive Weedo. Of course, Tracy's one of our big fans that watches every Tuesday, and so she's the sponsor tonight. And we have some pictures on Facebook of her POAs. There they are right there, and we'll talk about those after my interview with Kevin. I'll break down these pictures a little more, but of course the stallion up in the upper right or left corner is her TC Impulsive Weedo, who's doing a great job, and then that's four of his babies there. The colt right underneath him, if it would have been a filly, she said she had it sold, but since it's a colt, it's still available. All her other babies this year are already sold. Usually she sells them when they're still wet, so she's got a great program down there in Florida, and we'll be talking about it, like I say, a little later in the show. So again, this is the 16th show of the year. This is the 16th Tuesday. We haven't missed one yet, so I'm nicknaming this one 16th on the 16th because today is April 16th. Hopefully everybody got their taxes taken care of yesterday. I know it's long faces for some of us, but when I had horses, I always had deductions for years and years. My tax guy said, even the federal government knows you can't make money in horses, so that's what he told me. So I claimed them for about 20 years as a loss. Hopefully the IRS agent ain't watching tonight. But so I want to bring in Kevin now and welcome him to the show. How you doing tonight, Kevin?
Doing awesome. Doing great.
Good.
Proud to be here.
So I just want to say something. You know, I had your picture on the wall when you showed horses when I was a little kid and stuff, but we never officially met because I got into POAs, my family did, in the 80s, and you were kind of moving on to Appaloosas and different things. And I told you off the air that Lynetta Puffenberger was just here, and she goes, something. I said, I've never talked to Kevin before live, so, you know, on the phone, just on text and stuff like that. And she goes, really? And she goes, well, he's a talker. So so I said, well, that's good because I just need to have him talk. So, but yeah, I've known about you, you know, my whole life.
Which picture did you have on the wall?
Which picture? I had a picture of Royal Exhibit, so you might not have been in it, but I knew you were connected with him because I grew up with the story that you made him bow at the championship show, right, and all that. So, you know,
yeah.
That's all true. We'll get into that later, I guess. But, you know, that was a big deal when you're growing up showing POAs. And then later I got to meet your mom and dad, you know, and I sat on the couch in Iowa there, and Aaron gave me all his magazines and catalogs, and he was going to sell them. He had them for sale for $200, and Bud Campbell took us down there, and after about 2 hours of talking to me, I was probably about 14 then, he said, I'm just going to give this kid these books, because, you know, he heard I was talking all these pedigrees and stuff, so that was kind of cool. So.
Well, I'm glad you got them. Because
yeah.
I want to say that, you know, what you've done to keep the history of the POA alive and in everybody's mind on these podcasts and the POA history, you should be commended and considered as one of the top guys that's keeping it going.
Well,
if there's a POA honor roll, you've got to be on it.
Oh, well, thanks. You know, I'm living vicariously through this podcast now, basically, because like I told you off there, I sold my POAs years ago. You know, my stallion had passed away. I had him since he was a baby. Then we sold him and got him back. He was a pretty famous stud, Kiddo Tough. He's in a lot of pedigrees. He's kind of like Double Tough would have been back in the day. He's a great grandson of Double Tough, but he had that big impact, you know, on POAs kind of, and pleasure horses and stuff like that. And he was homozygous, so that helped. But anyway, when he passed away, and then hay was just getting so high, and Minnesota DOT put me out of the horse hauling business. So I said, I'm moving down to Puffenberger's, and I'm going to work for him as a ranch hand and start over. And that's what I did.
Wow. Wow.
That's what I did. I loaded Kiddo, was 20 some years old, and his daughter, and all my furniture and my the people that was with me at the time. I was with a lady that had 2 kids, and we'd been together 5 or 6 years then, and we come down here and we went our separate ways afterwards. But I started over, and Lynn gave me a house to live in. His grandson Cody would be Tommy's son. He bought another house and hadn't sold his old house yet, so I lived in it for 6 months and worked as a hand for a while, for about 8-9 months. Drove a tractor and plowed and disked and stuff and bucked hay, and I was kind of old to be doing that. And then I got on my feet. Now I'm managing at a car dealership, and here we are. I'm talking to Kevin Jewell. So
well, I'm going to nominate. I don't know if there's a POA Hall of Fame, but I'm nominating you for the Hall of Fame.
Well, I'm in it, but but thanks.
Oh, awesome.
So people recognize it, but I'm the youngest person to go in it. I beat Gene Carr by a few years, and Tracy, our sponsor tonight, she's in it, and both of us are historians. Tracy and I, that's how we get along. We're kind of from the same seed there, you know what I mean? We can rap pedigrees, and Gene was that way. Gene Carr, of course, he read pedigrees. And,
oh, yeah.
You know, Bud Campbell used to display me like a monkey. You know, he'd bring me out and show me, you know, to people like your dad, and he'd go, who's the sire of Prince Fury or somebody, you know, and I'd just say it, and then, well, who's his sire? And there's even a joke that Pat Burton started, stop him when he gets the black hand. So that's it. But tonight ain't about me, Kevin. It's about you, and I'm honored that you're on here. You know, I've even seen you on TV now with your son-in-law and stuff. So, but so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, we did make it to the Last Cowboy for a couple seasons, and probably again this season, because he's qualified again this year.
That'll be good. He's talented, and that show, you know, for horse people, that, you know, there's so much bad programming on TV now. When something like that comes on, we all gravitate to that. You know what I mean? Even if you're not into reining, if you just like horses, you're gonna like.
Yeah,
that.
It's exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah. So
it's fun to be involved in the filming of it too.
Right. I'm glad that was a good experience for you. So, and I was going to ask you something on there. We're really, just like the pictures, we're going out of rotation, but I noticed you were shoeing on there and stuff. Have you made a living as a shoer off and on over the years with training too, or?
I went to horseshoeing school in 1976.
Wow.
I left. I went to Iowa State out of high school. 1975. I graduated high school, and that fall I went to Iowa State University, and I was there from, I guess we started in September, and I left in February after 2 quarters. And what I was doing was, I got involved with the rodeo team, and I was not a good student, to be honest with you. And I was involved with the rodeo team, and I was missing riding horses and being involved with the horse thing. And I got hooked up with Lowell Roseland from Iowa, from Marshalltown, Lowell and Cheryl. I got hooked up with them and was doing some. I mean, I would hitchhike from Ames, Iowa, over to Marshalltown or over to Rhinebeck to the Grinders, and I was just trying to stay involved. And Lowell took me to some Appaloosa shows. And I decided college is not where I wanted to be, and I sold everything I had in my dorm, right down to my extra tennis shoes, and I went to horseshoeing school in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Oh, wow. In Stillwater, huh?
Yeah,
okay.
It was the school now is located at Purcell.
Right.
That Oklahoma Horseshoeing School.
I go by it.
535.
Yep. When I go to Texas.
Jack Roth was the owner. But he was in veterinary college at the time, and he had built a small school out on the east side of Stillwater, and it had 3 or 4 single-wide trailers with bunk beds in it, and he had a small shop with a classroom and a school bus that we went out every day and worked on horses, and that's where I started shoeing horses. Okay. I decided if I was going to be in the horse business and a horse trainer, it wouldn't be a bad idea to know how to shoe, and I'd always been intrigued by it, so I went and did it.
Right. Well, that's cool. And then that was a good start to your whole career, you know.
It was. Yeah. I never shod horses as my main living. It was always part of what I did as a horse trainer or an assistant or, whoever I was working for. It was always part of my job.
Okay.
So it did, it did make me extra money always.
Right.
I remember the very first horse I shot for money. When I graduated that horseshoeing school in Stillwater, they asked me to stay on and assist with. They had one instructor, and they had asked me to stay on and assist for a while, and I really didn't have anything else to do. So I thought I liked Oklahoma, and I thought I'm going to stay and do that.
The winters are a little better in Oklahoma than Iowa, yeah.
Well, I was 19 years old and having a good time too.
Right.
But the very first horse I shot for money while I was assisting, there would be people that would call and want their horses shot, and the school couldn't handle it, and they'd give it to me to go out and do it. Very first one I did was $14. I thought I had hit $14.
Woo! Yeah.
I used to work all day baling hay in Iowa and get paid $10.
Right. Yeah, and it didn't take that much to fill up the pickup back then either. $14.
No.
Put a couple bucks in.
Yeah.
So that was cool. So then I always felt like, I know you've had a career judging too. I always felt like judges kind of had, a little better, what should I say, just an advantage a little bit if they had some shoeing knowledge or farrier knowledge. It just seemed like they know, judges study movement too, but.
I will be honest with you. I think whether you're showing halter horses or riding pleasure horses, reiners, whatever, if you have farrier knowledge, it's a tremendous advantage.
Yeah.
Tremendous. And as a judge, it's a tremendous advantage. There's something about, and I studied it pretty hard back in the early days. I would ride horses and turn around and shoe them, and then I'd ride them again and go back and shoe them again. And I would study how they moved and the differences that could be made with their feet, and I got pretty good at it.
Right.
So,
I bet. Yeah.
And another advantage was as a trainer, back when I was showing lots of halter horses, I'd shoe those things 2 days before we left, and my horses always looked brand new shoes.
Right.
I never went to a horse show with my horse's feet in bad shape. Never.
And that's one thing about when you go look, because as a breeder, I'd always go to places and you'd see some pretty bad feet, some pretty bad hoofs sometimes, even at really good places. Some of the brood mares,
yeah, you would.
You'd be like, or they're down in the pastures a little bit, and you're like, wow, their show horses are up in the barn, but the brood mares are looking a little, so let's talk about a little bit you starting out in Iowa and kind of your family showing in POAs. And did you see the guest book on there? I got a copy of the guest book from Indianapolis, and the old guest book, the original leather tooled one, you're the last name ever to appear in that guest book.
I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw that.
And I seen that in February, and I'd already had this idea to have you as a guest. I don't think I'd contacted you yet, but I maybe hadn't. So I took a picture of that, and it was actually my brother's birthday. It was 5/28 of 1970, so it was 2 months and 2 years before I was born. You signed it, and you signed Kevin Jewell, Green, Iowa, and then you wrote hi, and then you dated it. And I don't know how old you were then. You don't have to say how old you are, but you were a kid.
Well, yeah, 70. I'd have been. Let's see. I'd have been 14.
14, yeah.
14, 13.
Yeah.
Pretty good penmanship, though.
That was really good penmanship. Yeah, that's why I'm like, how old is this guy? No, I'm kidding. But Bropes had signed in there. Charlie Bropes and his two kids had signed on there. And there was some other people that signed on there, too. Bob Moser and Bobby Moser was on that same page. And now they have a different book. I don't know why they quit using that book, because there was pages left. But they've had several guest books over the years. But, of course, now it's in Indianapolis. But, when I'm flipping through that book and I'm seeing all these names I know, and the very last name was yours. And I said, well, that's kind of fitting. I got to bring that up. So I took a picture. And that's a beautiful cover, too, hand. I don't know who tooled that. Maybe you know, but I imagine.
I don't.
So Ruth Pecoy or somebody might have known who did that, or maybe, of course, Les Boomhauer. Somebody knows who did that. I imagine somebody donated it to the club, But
Yeah, probably.
Of course, this is long before, it was decades before the cross ponies, and then, of course, another 15 years till the Lauren Mixer painting and stuff. But
yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a quick question. I like to put people on the spot a little bit, but not too much. But have you followed POAs? I mean, I know you're in the horse business and you got into reining. You were in showing Appaloosas and stuff, but have you kind of kept an eye on POAs over the years?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I had a judge's card way back when I was a teenager. I mean, when I was old enough to get a judge's card, I think 18, 20, somewhere in there.
Right.
And I judged a few pony shows back then. But then I got so involved with the Appaloosa horses, especially, and life and family, and I didn't keep up with the judging. But I recently have gotten the judge's card again, and I think it was maybe 3 years ago. So I kind of keep an eye on it. But
right.
I don't know a lot of the people. Right. I mean, I see posts on this site, and I see people that from my era,
right.
lots of kids that I grew up riding horses with and riding ponies with that comment. But I haven't been to a POA show in a long time, and every now and then the last couple of years I've gotten called to judge in this area,
okay.
And I could never do it because they always called so late. I already had a job lined up for that weekend.
Right.
So, but I'm holding out to judge that POA Congress someday. I'd like to do that before it's quit.
Well, I put your name in the ring, so I don't know but anyway, because I figured you didn't know a lot of people now, so that makes you a good judge. You know the product and you know horses, and but
yeah, I don't know very many people.
Right. Well, that's good.
Not like I used to.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
In Halter, I try not to look at the people because I still know a lot of people. Of course, doing this show, I've interviewed some people, that I'm going to be judging. So I try not to even look at them. That's what they say. Just like the old saying, you're supposed to make all the horses gray, and stuff, especially in the apps and POAs, supposed to just make them all the same color when you're judging Halter. So you ain't looking. Of course, to me, color's part of it anyway. That's what makes them pretty, but that's what I try to do with the people. So then when I judge showmanship, I stare them right in the eyes because I'm like, well, I didn't get to look at you in Halter, so I'm going to look at you now. So,
well, quite honestly, I look at everybody, and there's lots of times I say, hi, how you doing, Tom or
right.
Joe or whoever.
Right.
I've judged so many horse shows that, I don't have a problem with judging people I know.
Right.
And I like to look at the whole package,
Right.
There's you can't judge just from the saddle down or from the lead shank down. You got to judge the whole package.
Yeah.
And so I don't worry about that. It's hard not to judge and not know anybody these days. I mean,
right.
As long as I've been in it, there's always people I know.
And you've had experience in quarter horses and Appaloosas and and reining and
Paints,
stuff.
Reining, the whole gamut.
So all the colors, yeah. So how many shows you judge a year about now?
Oh, probably 15. Probably
okay.
15 to 20.
Yeah, on top of doing everything else you do, so
Well, I don't do that much anymore. I haven't since my knee operation 3 years ago. I quit. I kind of slowed down a lot riding, but I just getting back this year. My wife and I, we have a couple reining horses that we're going to be showing as an older couple. We're going to go and she's never shown reining. She showed a lot of Appaloosa horses back in the day and has a lot of world national championships and pleasure and hunt seats, but she never did do any reining.
Okay.
And we're so connected now with the reining with my daughter and son-in-law and my son.
Right.
That we decided to get a couple horses and show ourselves.
Well, that's
what we're going to do.
That's good. Do they have a senior class? They probably do.
Well,
don't they?
Well, I have to show in the open, in the professional, but my wife can show in in the green. They have what they call a green, and they have rookie. They have non-pro. They have limited non-pro. They have a lot for the lower levels, and she's going to show in that. And I can show in the open, but I can also show in the category of the prime time and limited open.
Okay.
All that.
Cool. Well, that'll be fun.
If you want to call it the old guys raining, yeah.
Well, I wasn't trying to call you old, but I had a customer the other day called up here and he asked for the old guy, and it was me because I do have white hair, and I'm like, wow, I'm 52 years old and I'm old, but anyway, yeah. Well, that's better than going golfing, you know, or sitting on the porch with your wife, going out and showing horses. That's a pretty cool life.
Well, we both have golf clubs too, but we don't find time to go out and use them.
Right. Right. So she grew up in horses too, huh, in Appaloosas?
She grew up in the POS.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I grew up, in Green, Iowa.
Right.
I sent you some of those pictures of our early days.
Right.
There was a picture of my dad and my older brothers and then two little boys on the ground in front of them. I don't know. Do you remember that picture?
Yep, I do. Yep. And it should be on here somewhere, but I can't get it to pull up. But
that was July 4th, 1957.
Wow.
And I was born October 1956. And my brother Chris and I are the two little ones in front. And then my dad and Mike is on his right, and my brother Doug is on his left. And that was, my dad had a drill team.
Okay.
That when my older brothers were that age, he had a drill team that he coached, and he and my mother, I don't know how many times during the month they would have them come out, but they would kids from the area would ride their horses and their ponies out to our farm, and we had what I called our arena, which was just a level spot out in the pasture that we ran the disc over every now and then, and they would practice their drill team, and it was called the Hoof Beat.
Wow.
And my dad, that's the picture right there.
Yeah, I found it.
I'm the little one that you can only see his head right.
You're the head right in the front, huh?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So they would on July 4th they would go into the practice football field and do a program for the town of Green. And everybody rode their horses and met there. It was 2.5 miles from our house, about probably 3 miles to the football field, and everybody just ride there and do their program, and that's how my older brothers started. And then my dad got involved in the POAs shortly after they were formed. They started there in Mason City with the Boomhauers, and my parents were really good friends with the Latches, Helen and Elroy.
Right.
And I have a picture. I sent you a picture of my dad and Elroy. They were
by that fence or inside, but I got it here. Right there, cage. Yeah.
They were judging that's a picture where they were judging a show in Blue Earth, Minnesota.
Wow.
My dad and Elroy were probably best of buddies.
Were they really?
And yeah, they were very good friends. And they judged a lot together. And Elroy died of cancer. Oh gosh, maybe around 66, somewhere in there.
It was early. Yeah, I know that.
It was a shocker. It knocked my dad for a loop. But
right.
He went on and went to auctioneer school, and he kept judging shows. The first experience I had judging, I was his ringman a lot of big open shows.
Okay.
Back then, we'd go to open shows that would last from 8 o'clock in the morning till midnight, And I was his ring steward, and sometimes he would let me judge a class, and turn it in. He might change the way I had it.
Oh yeah.
He'd come, go ahead and judge this one.
Boy, that was a lot of experience. Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, it was. It was.
So that's your dad on the left, right? And then that's.
Yep. Elroy is on the
right.
Is the other one, yeah.
Yeah, and some of the people watching tonight will know Elroy's son, who's passed away now. Wayne. But Wayne raised, he raised his family in POAs and showed some halter, raised some babies and stuff.
Helen and Elroy's place was about 8-10 miles from our house.
Okay.
And in fact, my brother Doug dated their daughter in high school.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, he dated her for a short time.
Okay.
And then when Wayne and Judy got married, they moved on the farm where Helen and Elroy were. And we went to their house, oh gosh, every month. It seemed like we were there every month or something.
Really?
Riding ponies or trading ponies or just having dinner or whatever. After Elroy died, my parents spent a lot of time with Helen and Wayne and Judy.
Okay.
And Judy, to this day, she's the only sister we've ever had. We call her our sister. So,
right. Wow. That's good.
Yeah, she was very instrumental in my parents' later life, and
right.
all four boys were gone, and Judy took care of both of them
Okay.
like they were her best friends while they were in their later years. So.
Well, it was 1987 when we went down to your dad's place to get those magazines and catalogs, and I remember they took us over to Wayne and Judy's, and that's how I got to see Cricket McHugh, and of course she was in her everyday clothes. She was older then, and then her daughter QT McHugh, and they had some other ones there too, and we got to tour their place and talk about latches. I forgot all about that till you mentioned that he took us over with Bud Campbell and stuff over to latches. So.
Yeah, they were tight, and then just down the road, probably 5 miles from the latches, over in Marble Rock were the
Murfields, yeah.
And we went there all the time too.
Okay. Wow, that was a cluster of POA people. Let me tell
it
you.
was. Ed Murfield, and I'm trying to think of what was Mrs. Murfield's name.
Oh.
There was Doug and Alan were the boys, right. And Carolyn. And
yeah.
Why can't I think of Miss Murfield's name? Huh.
Audrey,
no.
No?
Yeah, maybe it was.
Might have been Audrey, I think. I don't know. They might be one of them might be watching one of the girls. Audrey, Chris, your brother just said Audrey, and he also thought 62 for Elroy Latch passing away. He thought it was 62. So
yeah, that sounds about right.
But
well, the Mrs. Murfield used to play the organ, and growing up, no joke, every Iowa POA show, and a lot of Minnesota and Illinois shows, she had an organ that was on this little trailer.
Wow.
And she would back it right up to the arena, and she would play the organ the whole show.
Isn't that something?
And it was amazing. Those days are long gone, but they were great times. I mean,
yeah.
I remember loping around in a pleasure class, and she would play that tempo music perfect for a horse going for Western pleasure.
Right.
And then during the barrels and poles, she'd play faster music. And
right.
She was amazing.
You'd have to play a lot slower music now the way they lope around, huh?
That is true. That is true.
Well, people are really enjoying these stories and stuff. I'm getting a lot of comments on here, so you can always go back. Now I got the picture where there's a team. Is that your dad on a?
That's one thing my dad did all his life.
Was drive?
In the wintertime, we drove that bobsled, and in the summertime, he would drive a hitch wagon.
Okay.
And of course, we had POAs all the time, and he had some big horses. He had some Appaloosas, but it was mostly POAs. And I remember going out. He'd want to hitch that. We'd always drive 2 or 4. Lots of times we'd drive 4. Depending on how deep snow was, he might need 4 to pull that bobsled for the kids. But we'd go out, and I hated hooking those teams up. It was cold. Cold. We had to, and he made me curry the ponies all the time before we'd harness them up. And the harness was heavy, and then we'd drive, and then we'd have to unharness them and curry them again. And later on in life, I can remember hitching that team up myself and driving them into town to the swimming pool so that I could get all the girls. Because the girls, they didn't care about cars and boys. They cared about horses. They'd get in that hitch wagon like crazy.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, they're ate up with horses. Yeah, Somebody
I
asked
had
me. Go ahead.
I had a picture also. I sent you the team. I guess Dad and I are up in that last pair of ponies that I showed when I was 18. The two. There's my dad with his
I'll go
horse.
back to that. Yeah.
When he did the hoof beat.
Okay, that's what you were talking about, the drill team.
That was his horse that he rode when he led the hoof beat.
Boy, look at those 50s cars. Those, you can tell them were from the 50s. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Dad and Gray, you got written on there. So, yeah, I didn't realize he judged as much as he did. I knew he was an auctioneer, you know, and
yeah, he judged quite a bit.
Yeah,
he judged quite a bit.
Then I went to auctioneer school in 2013 in Missouri, but I like in his catalogs that I have, he'll write, of course, back then, 210, 220, and you can tell when he'll take a break and he'll write down a price, and then he just keeps, so instead of one price like you'd see in a normal catalog, there might be 10 prices because he would keep putting the progression
He would always
down.
do that.
Yeah.
He would always do that.
Well, that's a good way not to lose because I've lost track, especially if somebody asks you a question or if you get a windy pedigree reader or something, like I was. And
they used to sell. I sent you pictures of Tonka's Champ. Did you find those?
I'll look for those.
Little bay pony with the white blanket. Tonka's Champ was one of the first. The first pony I showed was Circle J's June Star.
Okay.
And that would have been it was a little roan pony. There's my mom driving. I think that pony's name was Freckles.
That was your mom. We'll go back to that later. But yeah, here I got an arena shot where somebody's walking out of the arena.
That's my dad showing Circle J's Hawkeye Joe in Pomona, California, in 1969.
I was going to ask you about Hawkeye Joe because he had to be one of the original buckskins in POAs. I'd say he had to be an early one. And
he was early. That was 1969. If you go back to that picture of the truck and trailer.
Yeah.
I thought you had that.
I got that somewhere, right there. Is that on the way to California?
The Blue International. We called it the Binder. It was an international pickup. My dad bought that new, and up until then we had a 19. I think it was a '64 Chevrolet that my older brother Doug had named Clarence. And he named it Clarence because it had a sign on the dash that said, check your clearance before backing up. So he named it Clarence. And that truck my dad bought new, I think that's the only vehicle that I remember that we had new ever growing up. Wow. And it was in 1970, and it was 1969. So we got, I don't know why he got a 70, but he was good friends with the international dealer in town, and it had air conditioning, which was unheard of. And that's what we went to Pomona, California in.
Okay.
And you notice the trailer says Goldenrod Pony Farm on it.
I see that. Goldenrod, yeah.
We borrowed that trailer, and I think we took 4 ponies, 4 or 5, and 2 of them were Stones ponies.
Okay.
We were good friends with the Stones. We went to the Stones all the time.
Right.
In Sheraton. Kirk and Don were my age, and my age and my brother Chris. So we knew them real well, and they were fun to be with. They had a big house. They always had the latest stuff, and the Morris girls were down there too. Ray Morris worked at the Golden Knot Farm, and he had, I don't remember, 3 or 4 daughters, and they were all cute and fun, and
some of them are watching tonight. I bet they follow the show. Sheraton
from our house seemed like, forever away. It was down in South Iowa, and of course back then there were no interstates. We drove a 2-lane highway the whole way, but we went down there. We went down there often. It was a lot of fun. But that's what we went to Pomona, California in 1969.
Okay.
Nursing that thing over the hills and going like heck down the other side.
I like the card on the top there. The card's up there.
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah. I seen, because I was trying to make that out. I'm like, does that say Circle J? It doesn't. And then I seen Goldenrod. No. I was laughing when I read that. I said, oh, that's POA people. They share, and they help each other out. And that was probably a 16-foot stock trailer is what it was, right? Yeah.
We went all the way. No, it had partitions.
Did it? Okay.
It was a sure enough horse trailer. Well, it's a pony trailer.
Right.
But we went out there. It was 1969. My brother Doug had been in basic training, and he came home in, I guess it would have been late May, early June, and then he was headed for Vietnam.
Okay.
And he came home and he drove with us all the way to California.
Wow.
And we went to some friends in Reedley first. We stayed there for probably a week. And during that week, we made a side trip and we took my brother Doug into Oakland and put him on the boat to Nam.
Wow.
So that was our trip. We went out with Doug and came back without him. Of course, I know my parents were all. To me, it was just my brother was going off to war, but it was a different time.
It was traumatic for your folks.
Yeah. It was. I'm sure it was. But we had a great time in Pomona. That's for sure.
Right.
That was the first time I'd ever been to California. But my parents, we didn't usually do big vacations. My parents always took us to the Big Pony Show. That was our vacation.
Yeah, a lot of people still do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Look at that single cab too. Can you imagine all you guys in that single cab truck nowadays? That's rare.
No, there would be 2 or 3 of us in the front. Everybody else was riding in the camper, looking out that window over the cab.
Right. Here's a picture that I've had on the show before with Ray Peets and you and is this you and Chris? Here with the 1966.
Yeah. We sold Tonka's Champ at that POA sale. I remember we sold him on Friday. The sale was always in Mason City, and Mason City was where Boomhauer started the POA.
Right.
And I can't remember if it was Friday and Saturday or Saturday and Sunday. Maybe it was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But anyway, we sold Tonka's Champ, which was the pony that we had done really well with, and he brought maybe $750, and it took about an hour to sell him.
Right.
Back then, do you remember Benny Kringen?
Oh yeah, I got to meet him.
The ringman
from South Dakota.
What a hoot he was! I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Benny Kringen and of course Ray Peets and Keith Stone and Harold Flagle, all those guys read pedigrees.
Yeah.
And the auctioneer, I don't remember who was auctioneering then. I don't think Dad had been to auction school by then. But anyway, we sold Tonka's Champ. Took about an hour, and everybody cried, everybody cheered, everybody stood up. And then the next day, if we sold him for $700, the next day my dad bought this pony, Driftwood's Black Velvet, for $750.
Wow.
And everybody said, "You're crazy." And I remember Dad said, he was a stallion when we bought him from Ray Peets. And Dad said, "Monday he'll be a gelding." And I remember everybody was like, "You're not going to cut that thing." And sure enough, Monday he was a gelding.
He was a gelding.
Yeah, he had a heart-shaped spot. You can kind of see it on that right hip. He had a perfect heart-shaped spot back there.
Okay.
And I took that pony. That says 66, right?
Right.
The 1967 National Show was in Columbus, Ohio. The International Show.
Okay.
And my oldest brother Mike and I and Doug Murfield, we went in Murfield's single cab truck with they always had this wooden box on the back of their truck, and they'd fill the bed with sand, and they'd jump 3 or 4 ponies in the back of that truck.
Wow.
Close the tailgate, close the box, and then hook a trailer to it. And that's the way we went to the pony. We went all the way to Columbus, Ohio. My dad had a old white, looked a lot like that Goldenrod Pony Farm trailer.
Okay.
He had a white one, and it was white and rust, actually. It was two-tone, white and rust. And we took Murfield's truck with 3 or 4 ponies in the back end in that box, and the trailer hooked to it with 4 more ponies in it. And we went to Columbus, Ohio, Doug, my brother Mike, and I, eating bologna sandwiches and popcorn in the front seat, all 3 of us, all the way to Columbus, Ohio. We got to Joliet is it Joliet, Illinois?
Probably,
Yeah,
yeah.
Joliet, Illinois. And that old white trailer of my dad's, uh, the right front spindle broke and the wheel just passed us on the highway.
Oh, wow.
And we limped into a gas station. And back then, gas stations were all service stations.
Right.
Mechanics. And
Yeah.
there was a guy that he said, well, we can just chain that thing up. And I remember he log chained that axle up, that front axle on that side. And we went all the way to Columbus and back to Iowa
With 3 wheels.
with it on 3 wheels. Eating bologna sandwiches all the way.
And thinking you were in heaven too, probably.
Murfields never ate out. They always took white bread and bologna sandwich.
That I can imagine
Had to save money.
Yeah,
Ed was a penny pincher, I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, I could figure that. I got to meet Ed. He was older. And then I got
He
to know Doug.
He handled nickels like they were manhole covers. I'll tell you that.
Oh, that's
and
funny.
and I was just a year older than this picture, and
Right.
I remember sleeping in a tent with a bunch of kids and fighting with my brother about taking a shower. But I took that black pony and I won the Western Pleasure class. I don't remember what age group. I would have been 66. I would have been 67. I would have been 11. So 12 and under maybe. I don't know. But I won Western Pleasure. I also got my first pair of chaps delivered to me at that show. And believe it or not, they were green. I thought they were awesome.
I bet you did.
I thought they were awesome. But the Western Pleasure class, it was a bunch of kids in it. There was probably 50, 60 in it.
I bet.
And we had to stop and dismount on the rail during the class. And I remember that black pony, he wasn't a great pleasure horse, but he stood there for me to get back on, and I won the class. I came home with a trophy almost as tall as I was. That was my first international POA show.
Wow. That's quite a memory. And it was on this guy who was a stallion in this picture, and people were like, why are you buying him?
He was a gelding the next day on Monday.
Right. Yeah. I always liked Ray. I got to talk to Ray a lot when he was older because he was still breeding, and he'd call sometimes. Of course, he was
a great guy.
Great guy, yeah. He got Parkinson's towards the end of his life, and he'd write me letters, and he'd say, I hope you can read this, and he'd handwrite them, and I could read every word. And, we chatted a lot. Of course, he got along with my dad real well. My dad would drive for him and Bud Campbell sometimes, and even Max Nevergall. They'd go.
He had a daughter. He had a daughter that showed too, Renee.
Renee, yeah.
I don't know if she's still around, but she was older than me. But I remember her.
Yeah, she came back a little bit and bred some. She bred some POAs with the Driftwoods name years later. Yeah, because
there was a lot of people around that. The Iowa Club was huge back
it was
then.
huge, yeah.
We had a big group over in Davenport, the Slagles, the Clarks. Down in Indianola was Victor's.
Victor's, yeah.
And Flatcher's.
I did an episode on Victor's. Of course, Becky's still around, and Becky raised her 2 daughters in POAs. And
Becky was she was a hard one to beat back in the day.
I bet she was.
She was a really good rider, and her dad always mounted her good.
Right.
And she was, cute as crap. So the judges never look at the guys.
Right.
And so she was hard to beat. There's Keystone and my dad at the POA National Sale.
Yeah, that's cool.
That was usually for the first number of years. It was in Mason City. Then it moved to Marshalltown.
Yep. For 3 years.
I worked as a ringman at both Mason City and Marshalltown while my dad was crying the sale. And then I went to auction school in 79.
I was going to ask you if you went to auction school. I thought you might have.
I went to auction school in 79. Dad was one of my instructors. His name's on my diploma.
Wow.
And I did some POA auctions. I did one in Minnesota. I sent you a picture of my gang. There was the Latch Kids, the Grind Kids,
I hope I
Marty
got
Bond.
it on here. I don't know if I got all the pictures on here.
And
I
there was
tried.
that was a POA sale I did in Minnesota. I did another POA sale when I was working for the Salisbury's. I did a POA sale in Denver
Okay.
with Gene and Ken Bateman.
Okay.
And those are the only two POA sales I ever did. I always thought I might get asked to do the POA sale, but didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
I know
No.
I know my friend Doug Murfield did it a number of years.
Yeah, he did it. Doug Sorrell from Ohio did it a lot, and then when he needed some help, when he was getting older, they brought in Doug Murfeld to help him. And earlier when you were talking, maybe in '66, was that Johnny Woods? Maybe was the auctioneer, because he was a famous auctioneer and he did the POS.
Eddie Wood.
Eddie
Wood from Wynnewood, Oklahoma.
Wynnewood, Oklahoma. Yep, where the Tiger King was from.
Yeah, Eddie was a super good auctioneer. He was
famous. Yeah, famous.
He was kind of my idol when I was thinking about doing auction school.
Okay.
He was cool.
Yeah.
He was fun.
See, and your dad was one of mine, so then when I got to meet him, that was pretty cool. So then, of course, Doug Sorrell would have been, I was 14 when I first heard him. So, he did it all through the 80s. Well, like 85 was his first one, and then all through the 90s. I started reading pedigrees in 95, and then I did it for 15 years. Now the sale's done. They don't have the sale anymore, just because things are...
The first POA show I remember going to was the 1964 Iowa State Fair. I sent you a picture of, I think it was Indian costume, and maybe also I was riding a kind of a roan pony. June Star was the first pony we showed.
Okay.
But that was in '64. That's the first POA show I remember.
Wow, that was
State Fair back then was a big deal.
The State Fair was a big deal, yeah, and that was a lot of exposure, and some people still
it was
show
huge.
Adam at the State Fairs, but
I showed when I worked for the Salisbury's. We went to lots of State Fairs. When I got into the Appaloosa business, we still went to. I went to probably 10 State Fairs every fall, and it was the best exposure that you could get for your brand,
right.
your breed, your brand, yourself. The best exposure, because it showed to so many people, so many new people.
Oh, right. And there's horse people there too, and then just people. The sale and futurity went to Tulsa to the State Fair from '90 to '94, and the international.
Yeah.
And we had people get into POAs that became almost Hall of Famers just from. They were walking down the alleyway and said, "Oh, what's going on? Oh, it's a pony sale," and they didn't know. And they might have had quarter horses, or might have just been horse people. Some didn't have horses and got into horses because of it. And but it has its drawbacks too, because it's a busy fair and you're kind of trapped there. But for sure, to get your brand out there, like you said, and get the breed recognized, it's a big time. Yeah, it's
some of my best memories showing POAs was at State Fairs.
Was that State Fairs? Yeah.
We'd all sleep in the barn together, the kids, and we'd roam the midway at night and get in trouble, be late getting up to wash our ponies the next morning. And some of the best memories were at State Fair.
Right. So I know you mentioned a little bit about Salisbury's, and they're from just north of here a little bit. They were. And how did you get down to Oklahoma to work for them? I know you went to farrier school down here, but...
Well, before that, after I left farrier school, I came back and worked for a quarter horse guy, Jim Dudley, in Hampton, for about 7-8 months, and then shortly after that, I hooked up with Gail Bonison in just south of Cedar Falls, in what was the name of the town? But it was near Cedar Falls.
Okay.
And Gail had a grandson, Marty Bonison, and Gail was kind of in the ponies. The Greiners had been friends with him and gotten him involved heavy in the ponies, and he was looking for somebody to come. He built an arena and a barn there just south of Cedar Falls, and he was looking for a trainer to come and basically train his ponies and help his grandson Marty become a POA shower.
Okay.
And so I went there, and it went fast. It grew fast. We started. I'm trying to think what year it would have been. It would have been 77. Yeah, 1977. So I was there shoeing all the ponies, giving lessons, breaking the ones that needed it, and training. And I remember we had 2 or 3 halter ponies. We had a cart pony. We had 2 for Marty to ride, game pony, and that's where I met Caddo Super Streaker.
Okay.
That was Marty's pony.
Was his last name Jewell? Marty Jewell? Different?
It was, yes.
Yeah, but spelled
yes,
different than yours. Spelled
yeah.
Different. Yeah.
And so I started there, and that year that I worked at Bonison's and hauled Marty all over the country, in February we started at a horse show in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And so cold that when we left, couldn't start the trucks in the motel in the morning. We went up there with Greiners, Russ Greiner and his girls, and I and Marty. And I remember Russ, I don't remember what the arena was called, but it was a big indoor coliseum. And Russ kept going over and turning the thermostat up, trying to get it warmer in that building. And but we started the year in South Dakota in February, and we ended that season in Tampa, Florida, just before Christmas.
Wow.
And I went everywhere between those. So I went to California that year for the Nationals. I went to Arizona for the pre-Nationals. I went to New York for a show up there. We were hauling for points.
Yeah.
And there were lots of shows where Gail would fly Marty to meet me. And he flew, I think he flew Russ's daughter, Paula, a couple of times, and at us too. But man, we went to a lot of pony shows that year. Holy cow. And I remember that Caddo Super Streaker, he was
a nice horse. Oh yeah.
He was a nice pony.
Yeah.
He could lope a hole in the ground, and there were places that we would have a pony show, and they might have open classes, and I would ride him in the open pleasure class, beat everybody.
He just clean up. Yeah.
He was a nice horse. He was
Yeah.
a nice horse. And so during that I call that the wild summer, because I hauled Marty, but Marty was only, I was 20 years old. I know I was 20 because I got stopped leaving Waterloo for the national show in Venice, California.
Right.
I left with a 10-horse trailer that Gail had just had commissioned from what's the trailer company in they made the fiberglass trailers. Trig
trailers, yeah.
Yeah, he had commissioned a 10-pony trailer that got done the day before I left. In fact, I went and picked it up and helped him finish the darn thing. Stayed all night, came home and loaded up and headed for Arizona because there was a week-long show in Arizona before the national show in Venice.
Okay.
And I didn't get out of Iowa, and I got pulled over at a way station. And that trailer didn't have a tag on it because I just picked it up from the factory.
Right.
The truck I was pulling it with was back then you used to have a sticker on the side of your truck that indicated what weight you could haul with it. And we had a 4-ton sticker, and that wasn't enough. And I wasn't 21 years old. I wasn't old enough to have a CDL, and I didn't have a CDL. I didn't have a logbook. And all of those fines added up to like $1,500 cash.
Wow. That
I also didn't have. And I wasn't allowed to pull that rig out of the way station because I was illegal.
Wow.
So I had to call Gail, and Gail went to the courthouse and got everything he needed, came down, brought the cash, paid the fine, got in the truck, drove it to the next truck stop, got out, went back to Cedar Falls, and I went on to Arizona and California and back home, and haven't stopped at a way station since.
Right.
And I'm 67 now. That was when I was 20.
Wow. That's a cool story.
Yeah, so that was a big trip. Well, on the way home, we left Venice. Oh, Venice was a great show back then in the 70s.
Right.
You could go there, and we rode ponies in the surf. You just rode right out of the back end of the fairgrounds, and you could ride your ponies in the surf, and we did. Right. We did the Clark Boys and Julian Nemers. Julian Nemers was my best buddy growing up. I don't know how we hooked up originally, but growing up, I'd spend a week at his house in the summertime, and he'd spend a week at mine, and we'd do nothing but get in trouble and have fun.
His dad became one of my closest friends, even though the age difference, But I talked to Doc almost every week for years and years on the phone. So, yeah.
So Julian was out there, and we drove back to Iowa kind of together. We trucked on back together, and we stopped at Salisbury's on the way back. I remember we left. I think we drove nonstop from Venice to Salisbury's, and I can remember pulling in there, and I didn't know what my name was. I'd seen two sunrises through the windshield, but that's how I kind of met Salisbury's, on that trip.
Okay.
And then I spent the rest of that year hauling Marty, and we had a great time. Like I said, Marty was, I think he was maybe only 4 or 5 years younger than me, and so we were. Not only was he my student, but he was a buddy.
Right.
We were on the road together, and we had some great times. So that last horse show that season, I was in Florida, and Gail had called me and said, "I need you to meet me at a farm in North Florida on the way home to look at some mini horses." And I said, "Look at what? Minis." Okay. So we go there, and he bought, I don't know, 4 or 5 of them. And of course, I had a 10 pony trailer, so we had plenty of room for him. And we brought him home, and he started making plans to cut the stalls down in the barn and make 2 stalls out of one, and he was going to get all these minis, blah, blah. And that's when I decided I didn't want to stay in that place any longer.
Right.
Plus, I had a girlfriend I was pretty sweet on, and I had decided I thought I wanted to get married, and so it was time to make a change anyway. So shortly after that, the engagement fell apart, and I was stuck, not knowing what to do with my life. I was kind of in a hard place, and Salisbury's called and said they had, I think the girl's name was Schaumburg. Was a Schaumburg from Kansas back then.
Yep.
And she had been working for him, and she had moved on, was doing something else, and they needed somebody to come take care of the stallion and train some ponies and basically work there. Sandy was in school in Missouri at what was the name of her school? William Woods, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, so here I was. I'd quit my job, lost my girlfriend, didn't know what to do, so I headed for Oklahoma.
You were a country song, man.
Yeah, I was. All I had was I had a truck. I had a nice truck, and I had my shoeing equipment, and I was only 21. Right. I was 21 by then.
Uh-huh.
So I thought, I'll go see Oklahoma again. I liked it when I was there in shoeing school, so I went back. And I spent 78, 79, and 80 at the Salisbury's in Concowa, and that was a magical 3 years. I'll tell you, I had wonderful time, loved it, and learned so much. Gene and Carolyn were so good to me. They had a big bedroom upstairs in that big old house.
Okay.
And I had a dog. They let me bring my dog, and I had a good dog. I had a really good dog. I had shot a horse for Davis in New Hartford, Iowa, I think it was. I'd shot a pony for him and traded the shoeing for that Catahoula dog in the picture.
And that's the one in the picture, Catahoula leopard.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
And she was my constant companion after that. But I went down there, and I believe it was, I didn't even tell my parents. I remember writing my mom a letter because they didn't know where I was, and I wrote them a letter saying, well, things kind of fell apart for me, and sorry I didn't come, give you more warning, but I'm in Oklahoma and I got a job and I'm doing fine. And Gene and Carolyn they were so good to me that, I ate there, I slept
Right.
there. We went places together. We went, and Jimmy Don, their son, he lived in town at his own place. So it was just the two of them and me there. Sandy would be there in the summertime. She was at college and I don't think she was there the entire summer.
Okay.
She might have been staying in Missouri some, but she was there off and on. Jan Jones came one summer and worked there with us. She was a great girl too, a lot of fun, and
Right.
we had some good times. We had really good times. We went to a lot of pony shows, and had some huge success. I mean, I went 1 year to the National, and I believe it was Syracuse, and we had the Grand Champion mare, the reserve Grand Champion mare. We had, I don't remember if we'd sold that GR's.
You sold her.
Yeah.
You'd sold her already. But yeah, Chico's I'm a Cutie won was grand champion.
Yeah, that's right. And then I'm a Suzette was reserve.
Right.
And I had Tish Tennant was one of my only students actually that I had there.
Okay.
Because I was training and showing horses for the Salisbury.
Right.
And taking care of the breeding program. So it, like I said, they treated me like part of the family, and I owe so much to my early knowledge.
Chico S. Jr. He was quite a horse, wasn't he?
He was an exceptional animal. Yeah.
He was way ahead of his time. I know he had some, there was some height issues and stuff back then, but then 4 or 5 years later, 6 years later, it was all changed anyway, to 14 hands. But
exactly.
His head and neck looked so, or especially his neck and shoulder just looked more horsey than the ponies of that day,
Oh yeah. Yeah, he was way ahead of his time.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of controversy back then about wanting to keep him out of the show ring.
Right.
And I know there were some hard times that were had over that whole thing, but he left his mark on the POA world, no doubt.
Right.
That picture there, you can see Sandy is in front and Carolyn, and I believe that poodle's name was Peaches, and the big dog that's in front of Sandy, that was Duke.
Okay.
And then there's Jan is on the fence next to me, and I've got Gypsy, my dog, and that's Marty Bonison on my left.
Oh, okay.
Right behind Carolyn.
Okay.
And Gene's holding Chico S.
Okay. Well, for POA people in Oklahoma, the Sooner Club, that's your president, Jan Jones Nolan. That's her as a young girl. Yeah, she's the president right now because, of course, she stayed in POAs and raised the Caddos, after her mom and dad. Well, of course, her dad passed first. But
she's a lot like her mother. Her mother was hoo-wee. You didn't want to cross her mother.
Yeah.
And Jan was a lot that way too.
Jan and her husband Brian came here, and Jackson's where I work put them up in a hotel that they live a little ways from here, from Enid. So my wife and I took them out to eat, but they came on a live podcast and we talked about Art and Rocky's program, and the Caddos. We talked about Chico S. Jr. quite a bit because they had some great Caddos, from him, Super Streaker and a lot of those, and
Chico's I'm a QT. I remember the day she was born.
Yeah.
She was black. She was born black,
and
about a week later, she had gray rings around her eyes. And I remember Gene saying, "Well, she'll be a gray."
yeah, she'll be
And
gray. That had to come from the mother because there's no gray in Chico S. Jr.
no, and I named her. They,
Did you?
I
Okay.
remember. Yeah, they said, "What do you want? What should we name her?" And I said, "Why don't you do I'm a QT?" And that's what it was. So
That's what it
yeah,
was.
I got to name her. And there's Tish. You just had Tish Tennant in that one picture.
Okay.
She bought Suzette from them.
Okay.
And there's QT
That's
at the World Show.
The World Show.
80 in Hutchinson.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the same year you went grand then. And then somebody put a picture on Facebook today when they bought her at the sale. They said we bought her from, and it was a picture of you in the ring holding her in Des Moines in the sale arena. So
that those mares, Suzette, QT, and Chico's Miss Raindrop. Chico's Miss Raindrop. I remember when I showed her in Colorado. I don't remember what year that was. That would have been would that have been 79?
probably
Estes Park.
Well, the International was there in 75 in Estes Park, but
that's when I won the. I sent you a picture of Wooden's Dingle Delight.
Okay.
I won the boys pleasure on Wooden's Dingle Delight at the 75 International in Estes Park.
Okay.
And then I also was honored to win it's not a win. I received the Cyril Nair Sportsmanship Award.
You're one of the Sportsmanship Award winners? Yeah, that's still a big honor in POA. All these 60 years, of it, 66 now.
I won that in 75 at Estes Park.
Wow.
And and that was another trip we took in that blue pickup with the camper.
Yeah.
I think it vapor locked 10 times going up the mountain to Estes Park.
Bud Campbell tells a story about the Marker boys looking out their camper, and he said all he could see was big eyes looking out because of the mountain. They were from Minnesota and hadn't seen the mountains, and he said they were looking out their camper or their pickup, and he remembers seeing their big eyes. So
I showed two ponies out there, Wooden's Dingle Delight and GR's Razzmatazz.
Okay, remember that one, loud colored one, right?
Yeah, I sent you pictures of both of them. They were on a hitch wagon.
Okay.
And we sold them in 1975 at the International POA sale. And I remember I was on bingo at the Estes Park show. And it was my last year, and my dad came up to me and said, "I've got a big offer to sell this pony, but I'm going to leave it up to you." And all my life growing up with POAs, we raised POAs, and Dad bought and sold ponies and horses. He was a horse trader at heart.
Right.
And I remember probably 1961 or 62, I had this mare that I'd worked all spring and winter on to get ready for the early show in Des Moines, Iowa. And we went there, and she was ready to show, and George Lalonde bought her at the show and took her home the day before the show started. I didn't get to ride. I didn't even get to show her.
Oh.
And Dr. What was his name from South Dakota?
Edinburgh?
Dr. Edinburgh, his daughter had a stud horse that was fancy. She won everything on him.
Was
she
it
was probably
Richland's something finale or one of those something?
I can't remember.
Bonnie was her name, right?
Yes, and she was probably 5, 6 years, 10 years older than me. I don't remember. She was one of those girls that I, gaga over because she could ride and she was cute. And she had, anyway, he loaned me that stud horse because she wasn't there, and I got to show that show on that stud horse because my dad sold the mare out from under me. So he did that not regularly, but it happened. You know, I have a horse that was looking good, and Dad'd sell it. Somebody'd want to buy it. His motto was, "Time to sell a horse when somebody wants to buy it."
A lot of those guys were that, like Carl Oz from Minnesota and Max Neberdahl.
Carl Oz,
yeah,
right?
A lot of those guys were horse traders, you know.
They were, and so we're at the POA National Show in Estes Park in '75, and I mean it was the first few days that I got an offer for a lot of money for this pony, but I'm going to leave it up to you. And you know, I remember him telling me, "We've sold a lot of ponies that you were riding, and if they buy it, they want to show it here. So what's the deal?" And I said, "Dad, it's my last year. I'd really like to show it." And then I ended up winning the big pleasure class. There was probably 90 in it.
Right.
I remember it was huge, and so I was happy I didn't sell him. But he brought a lot of money at the sale that fall. I don't remember if he topped the sale, but I sent you a picture of the people that bought him too. My dad and mom and I are standing there with the family that bought him. They were from Illinois.
I don't think I got them all on here, all the pictures, because some of them, you know, I got kind of a timeline, but that's fine. But I remember that horse. I remember him. So he was around a long time.
He was a fun horse. I spent a lot of time on him, and he was a fun pony. We did pretty much everything with him, but his main thing was the Western Pleasure. He was a nice pleasure pony.
Yeah. So you finally you won the sportsmanship award, even though you didn't let your horse get sold. If your horse would have got sold, you would have really won it. So yeah, that's.
And then we went back. I believe it was '79 when I showed out there for the Salisburys. Of course, then all I could show was the halter.
Right.
And I showed the Chico's Miss Raindrop, and she was fun to show. I'll tell you what, she was. You just knew walking in with her that you had the best pony in the class.
Right. I'm going to find some pictures of her. Because she was on the cover several times, and I posted some pictures of her. She looked like she had a leg in every corner, you know.
Oh, she was fancy. She was fancy.
For back in the day.
And I broke her to ride, and she was a nice pony to ride, too. Very nice. And we sold her. I remember we went to a sale in Ohio.
Yep.
And we sold her, and I had taught her to bow. And she's the first one I taught to bow.
Okay.
And we're in that era.
I think she brought like $6,000 or something like that. It was a lot.
Yeah, something like that. And we were stuck on maybe 3,000 or 4,000. And I bowed her, and boy, the place lit up, and bids started flying again.
There she is. We were talking about state fairs. This ties everything together. The 72nd State Fair of Oklahoma, 1978. Yeah. And it says Chico's Miss Raindrop. Yeah.
She was fun to show because she always looked like that.
Right.
I mean, her ears were up. She was easy to show. But
there she was. 78 was the world show. So it was your 1 year. You were close. 78, you won the world.
Okay.
Because there's the big world trophy there, and you're standing there.
That was at Estes Park. Yeah.
Yep, Estes Park.
And same gray suit and vest that Carolyn Salisbury gave me that the first Christmas I was there, which would have been 78. No, it wouldn't have been. It would have been 77. That first
77.
Christmas. Yeah.
You rocked that vest and that brown vest and that gray suit.
Well, that gray suit, she gave me that for Christmas, and I was trying it on, and it had $1,500 cash in the breast pocket.
Oh wow!
For my bonus, they were so good to me. I'll tell you what, Salisbury's were. That was a good move I made going down there.
Right. Well, and you help them out too. I know Jim comments all the time. Hopefully, him or Sandy's watching tonight, or maybe both of them. But I know they.
Jim and I bowled on Monday nights.
Really?
I didn't see Jim that much, but I was on his bowling team Monday night, and the first year I won the most improved bowler buckle, and of course he accused me of sandbagging. But yeah, that's. I saw Sandy at the pony show. We went to a lot of shows together, and we did things together. That sale I did with Bateman's when we went out to that year, we got stuck in Colorado in a snowstorm. We spent 3 days in a hotel with the ponies in the trailer.
Wow.
I just walked out every morning and threw them some more hay and tried to get them to drink and waited for us to get dug out.
Right. Wow. Yeah, they had some good sales in Colorado. They had a lot of spring sales in Colorado. That was a tradition. So, yeah.
So I was there from, I think I left there in this January 80.
January of 80, okay.
I went to the World Appaloosa show. I showed a horse for, Gene and Carolyn had a nice Appaloosa stud horse. He was, Why Not a Bar was his name. And he was colored a lot like Chico S. He was a little redder, more of a star with a blanket. Really pretty horse. And I had asked him if I could start working with him and maybe show some of the Appaloosa shows along with the POA shows. And of course, they let me. And I had some success with him. I qualified him for the World Appaloosa show that year in Oklahoma City in halter and junior reining and junior pleasure. Mm. And I believe I don't think I got a ribbon in the halter. Halter back then was so big.
Right.
I believe I placed 7th or 8th in the reining, and I might have got a ribbon in the pleasure. But it was the first World Appaloosa show I went to, and I had showed at the Sooner Club there in Oklahoma mainly to get qualified. But at the World Show, I knew I'd been following in the Appaloosa magazine this guy, Dr. Hansen in Hampton, Iowa,
right,
with this horse called Royal Exhibit, and he had been the national grand champion as a yearling. And Hampton was right down the road from where I grew up, and of course I started my professional career working for Jim Dudley in Hampton.
Yeah.
So I wanted to meet this guy, and so I met him there at the World Show. And then he called me in Oklahoma and asked me if I feel like coming back to Iowa and going to work for him. And it was sad to leave Salisbury's, but they were, they gave me they sent me off with their blessing, and
right.
I packed up my truck and moved again, went back to Iowa. And at the time that year, Royal Exhibit was a 4-year-old.
Okay.
And he had foundered as a 3-year-old.
Ooh.
And he was in Hampton, but he was kind of crippled up, wasn't doing anything. And Dr. Hansen mainly wanted me to work his breeding program and fit his horses and train his horses. And Dr. Hansen had a bunch of kids, and his oldest, he wanted him to be showing. So that was my job, and I was a farrier also. So I went to work on Royal Exhibit, and within not too long, I got him sound. So I got him ready for the first horse show of the year, the big show back then in my area. Of course, they had the winter run. They had Denver, and they had Fort Worth, and they had all that kind of stuff. But the biggest show that I was getting ready for was called the Rail Splitter. And it was in Springfield, Illinois, in April maybe. I don't remember. And so I was getting Royal Exhibit ready for that, and I had a couple others that I took. And my best friend, Julian Nemers, one of his sisters went with me. She went to help me be my groom and my bucket holder and all that.
Do you remember which one?
It was, let's see.
Was it
was
Kathy?
Jackie.
Jackie or Kathy?
Kathy went.
Kathy?
Carolyn, it was Jackie, Carolyn, Kathy, and Ellen were his sisters.
Right.
And Kathy was the one that went with me.
Okay.
She went and helped me out at that horse show. And I stood grand under every judge. And back then, O.J. Martin was leading the horse that had won every winter stock show. He'd won Denver, he'd won Fort Worth, he'd won San Antonio and Tulsa. And he stood behind me.
Oh, wow. That was big, I bet, because he was already way famous then, OJ. So.
And I remember everybody just said, "Who's this POA kid? What's that horse he's got?" And because Royal Exhibit hadn't been out since he was a year old.
Right.
And he was a freak. He was a magnificent animal. I remember a few years ago, they did a vote. The Appaloosa Journal or the Appaloosa Club did a vote on the best halter horse of all time, and I think Royal Exhibit won it.
Wow.
But I never lost. That first year I took him out, like I said, I got him sound, and I started riding him too. And we qualified that year for the World Show, and of course we showed him halter.
Right.
And I qualified in Junior Pleasure, Junior Trail, Western Riding, and I believe Junior Hunt Seat.
Unheard of now to do that with a halter horse.
And so we went to the World Show, and he stood World Champion 8 Stallion.
Right.
And I bowed him.
Yeah.
I bowed him when he won. But he was undefeated that whole year. And he ended up High Point Junior Western Pleasure Horse in the Nation, and placed in a couple of the other categories. But he was a freak. I'm telling you, he was something else. And so I was there. That was 1980, and then I showed him again in 81. And I went to, when I went back to Iowa, I went to the POA National Show or National Sale, and it was in Marshall. No, it was in Des Moines. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Des Moines.
And I met this woman, Barbara Speed, and she knew of me, and I guess she was friends with the Greiners, and I had grown up when I hauled Marty. The Greiners were great friends. They were like my second mom and dad.
Right.
And spent a lot of time with them and their girls. So she had started through the POAs with the Greiners, so she knew of me through that. And I met her at the sale in Des Moines, and she was buying a pony, and asked me for my advice on it. And I think I remember telling her, "Don't buy that crazy thing." She bought it anyway, and it turned out to be the pony that kind of got me started in the rest of my life. So I went to trim ponies for her. She asked me to come do a trimming, and they lived in Iowa Falls, which is just right down the road from Hampton.
Right.
And I got done trimming the ponies, and they had she was doing it was in wintertime, and she was doing a Christmas pageant play at her barn, and I went to that, and then the next time she asked me to come to dinner. So I went to dinner at their house, and I walked in, and I met their oldest daughter, and so her name's Jamie Jewell now.
Okay.
And that's how I met my wife.
Oh, okay.
Through the pony.
Wow.
And she was riding that darn pony that
you said
I told Barb not to buy. And man, he was a headache the rest of our life, I'll tell you.
I wonder who that was. You maybe don't want to name him, huh?
His name was, they bought it from Bateman.
Okay.
Cannot remember that pony's name. I try to forget it, I guess.
I probably could look it up and see because in the catalog.
But while I was at Hampton working for the Hamptons, I met Jamie, and we got to be friends because I was giving her lessons, and I was giving her sister Sarah and her sister Amity lessons.
Okay.
Amity I think she was 6 or 8 years old. Sarah was 10 or something, and Jamie was a late teenager, and so we were friends, and we became better than that, and before long we were married.
Right.
So, and then the two of us were working there at the Hamptons and showing. Oh man, we were going to lots of horse shows, and we were hauling his oldest boy Brian to a lot of horse shows, and he had a pleasure horse and a game horse. We had half a dozen halter horses that we were showing. Jamie would ride pleasure horses. She would ride 2-year-olds. We had a lot of 2- and 3-year-olds that would ride,
Right.
And a lot of halter horses. And I think I spent 5 years at Hanson.
And you managed the stag. I mean, you handled Royal Exhibit as a sire too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Jamie and I did the collecting.
Okay.
And I did the inseminating. We had a vet that came and palpated all the time.
Right.
And so we foaled them out. Jamie and I did the whole thing. Our daughter was born right there in Iowa, our oldest daughter. And so we were there 5 years, and Royal Exhibit put us on the map big time.
Right.
I had pleasure horses that were get of his that won high points and won saddles for me, and I had a lot of winning on his offspring,
Well,
both in the halter and the riding.
Yeah, and the right. Well, the executive horses, they seem to do, a lot of stuff.
Yes, he was by the executive.
Right. I never knew that about you being his, that he foundered and that you helped him out. So that's a cool story. I knew about the bowing. That's how I first heard about the POA kid, Kevin Jewell, that bowed this horse at the World Show, and then of course he's so beautiful in the pictures. And it's probably a picture like this that I had hanging on my wall because he's just so cool to look at. But
I started riding him in the wintertime, and I would ride him in. There was a cornfield, thick cornfield that was right out beside the barn. Dr. Hanson's hospital was right across the street, and there was this big cornfield. And I taught him he taught me that he could change leads. I didn't have to teach him to change leads. This horse, but that's where I started riding him. I'd get him ready for that first horse show, that rail splitter show. I was riding him in the cornfield, down the corn rows, in that mud, and he was a physical beauty. I'll tell you.
You muscled him up too, probably doing that, yeah.
Well, he had a lot of it on his own. I just fit him. Baby.
Right. He had a short son that became a 2-time international champion, grand champion stallion, rated Royal, Ruth Picoy. Him. Yeah. And then he went to Indiana. Leon Chastain had him, and he won in 87 and 89. Of course, he was in Appaloosa, but when it went to 14 hands, he was short. And, he ended up being a famous POA. So.
Yeah, I owe a lot of my career to that horse, definitely.
Yeah.
And to the Hansons, to the Salisburys. Those are the ones that. And then in 86, we that fall we moved to. I met another guy at Appaloosa World Show or Appaloosa National. I guess it was the National. Met a guy named Brad Johnson, who was here in Georgia, and he'd been a football star at the University of Georgia. Played a little pro football, but he built a place north of Atlanta, and he was looking for a trainer to come and help him with his place. He made a big pitch, and it was time to leave Iowa, and I came to the big city, came to Atlanta.
That's what? And have you been in Georgia ever since then?
Been here ever since.
Okay, that was one of my questions on my notebook. Was what brought you to Georgia? So now I know, Brad Johnson. So
Brad Johnson, he asked me if I'd come run his program, and we had a lot of success with him too. It didn't last near as long as the other places. I think we were there, not quite a year.
Now, was that Appaloosas or quarter horses?
No, it was Appaloosas.
Appaloosas at Johnson?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We had some nice horses. I had a world champion pleasure horse for him while I was there. Had some nice horses and just some things that happened that caused us to move on from there. And pretty soon I was working for myself. So stayed with the Appaloosas for a long time. I believe it was while I was at Johnson's. It was that spring of '87 when I went to judges school to get my Appaloosa judges card.
Okay.
And so that started my Appaloosa judges career. And I believe in '90 I went and got my NRHA card.
Okay.
Might have been before that. I can't remember. I judged my first Appaloosa national show in Albuquerque, and I believe it was '91 maybe. And back then, I just remember the age stallions. There was 60 of them. It was, that's the size of the show
right.
back then.
Right.
And so I've been judging Appaloosas ever since, and NRHA, and I have my AQHA specialty reining and ranch horse card.
Right.
The horses have taken me around the world. I judged twice in 2 different years in Australia. Spent a month there. The second time we went.
Wow, that's cool.
Judged in nearly every European country. I judged in South America.
Weren't you just overseas this year somewhere?
I just got back from the Dominican Republic.
Oh, Dominican Republic. Okay.
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I go down there. It's different down there. I judge reining one day. The next day I judge all halter. It's an evening performance, and I judge every breed they have. Their halter shows are big down there. They have quarter horses, paint, Appaloosas, spotted walking horses,
okay.
Tennessee walking horses,
right.
and grade horses. And they all show their own divisions and their own sex. They show, I think, 3 age groups of each sex in their breed.
Okay. And
then they bring all the champions back for an overall grand champion.
Oh, wow.
The first year I went, the Tennessee walking horse was the overall grand champion. She was magnificent. I'm of the belief that a good horse is a good horse. And she, for her type, she was just, for her standard, she was like Royal Exhibit. Right. She was just phenomenal. And then this year I did the same thing. Last year, the second time I went, they asked me to judge roping, team roping, along with the halter. So I've been doing roping since I went. But the first time I went down, I had to hold a clinic and have an interpreter because the only roping they'd done was time.
Okay.
And the judged roping was new to them, so I had to explain the rules, explain the how we scored it, penalties and everything. Took a couple hours worth of clinic with an interpreter, and then I went and judged. And then I was back down there again, like I said a few weeks ago, and right. I did reining, halter, and roping.
Wow, cool. I bet they got some nice halter horses down there.
They do. They've imported some Appaloosas, some quarter horses. They have very nice horses, and it's kind of old school down there. Everybody is just so proud of their horses. The stands are full. It's a big round outdoor. It reminds you of a bullfighting ring, but it's not. It's
how do they dress? Like when they show halter, I mean, are they wearing straw hats or felt hats or both? Or
both, yeah.
Just like here.
And the stands are packed, and they've got everybody's drinking beer, and they've got bubble machines going, waving flags.
It's entertainment.
It's old school, yeah. And the people are. It's fun. I love going there, and they film it. They introduce me. I have to give reasons after every halter class. After I line them up old school, first, second, third,
right.
And then I have to give reasons. Because the crowd, they ask me when I judge, will you give reasons?
Right.
Some guys go down there and judge. They say, no, I'm not giving. Well, I eat it up.
I was going to say, yeah.
I get on I'm not on the mic because I have to talk to an interpreter.
Right.
But, I give reasons after every class. It's a great time. And they're just super nice people. Super nice people.
Wow, that's cool. A POA kid from Green, Iowa, judging in the Dominican Republic and Australia and all over. So
it's taken me a lot of places.
A lot of places. You get the Scottsdale now a lot, don't you, for reining?
Yes, yes, we go there a lot in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. Those are the main places we go. Um, every now and then I'll get to a quarter horse show and I'll see my good buddy Julian Nemers. He shows a lot of quarter horses. He's doing a bang up job. He and his wife Nancy. Julian was the best man at Jamie and my wedding, and I was the best man at his wedding.
Cool. Well, that's cool. I knew you guys were close, and I figured you stayed in touch, and you did. So, and he's made a career out of being a horseman too. So,
yeah. When he was riding East Acres Double Tough,
yeah,
he was the man. I'll tell you. I had another picture I sent you of Julian and I and Brian Cannon.
Okay.
We're in Oklahoma City, sitting on the. They used to have the national finals there at the fairgrounds in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And they kept the buck and shoots stacked up back behind there. And when we were there at a POA show one year, the three of us, Brian Cannon sitting up on top of the buck and shoot, and Julian and I are standing in front like we're PRCA cowboys. Julian and I had some fantastic times growing up at POA shows.
I bet. Doc told me a little bit about that 77 trip. He said, I just let Julian go because he didn't even go. Doc didn't go.
He didn't.
Yeah. And he stood
Julian and I were.
Yeah, and you were with, and yeah, you guys were together.
Yeah, we were driving the road together. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's something. Brian Cannon, you mentioned, didn't he ride Poco, or what's his name? TV, what's his name?
Poco something.
Poco Uno.
Yeah, well, I don't remember what the horse's name was. It was one that his sister.
Horse. Right?
Yeah, his sister had it first, and then Brian rode it.
TW.
Donna rode it first.
Yeah, Uno.
The Cannons were they were great people from. I think they were in Plano, Texas. They were just down the road from where Dallas was filmed. I remember when I visited them one time. They took me over to see the house where Dallas was
to see South Fork. Yeah, to see the.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. You guys were a little wild back then. You 70s guys that grew up in the 70s. Yazzie, Poco Yazzie. Somebody just put Yazzie. Yeah.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
There was an Uno too, but Yazzie's the one. Yeah.
We were the 70s and 80s. We were a little crazy. We had fun. I won't deny it. There's some stories out there that need to just stay in the back on the back burner. They don't need to be told.
Right. Not fit for the POA podcast, but that's funny.
But POA's growing up. I mean, it's the greatest thing. People that didn't show in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they have no idea. Shows were huge, and there were so many of them. Just all over we showed in Iowa and Illinois and Missouri and Minnesota, Nebraska. We showed everywhere.
Well, I know people nowadays don't like to hear it, but I try to. I'm on the board again, and I'm trying to bring POAs back, and a lot of other people are too. And it's still going. The show's 66 years this year, but in California, when you were at that show in Ventura, there was 17 age stallions in halter. And like last year at the Congress in Tulsa, there was like 17 or 18 males there. You know what I mean? From weanlings all the way up to age stallions. There was 17 stallions there. And, so, I mean, when I try to explain to people that the 70s was the golden era of POA.
Oh, it was, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I lived to go to POA shows, I'll tell you. My brother got married in 1972, I believe. And I don't know if that was the first year for the Elroy Latch Memorial Trophy. But are you familiar with that? Do they still give that trophy?
Well, I don't know if they do at the Midwest. They might. They gave it at the Midwest Regional for all those years.
Yeah, it was the Midwest Regional, and the winner of the 13 to 18 or whatever it was, equitation.
Right.
Got that Elroy Latch Memorial Trophy. And my dad, being so close with Elroy and growing up with Elroy, I wanted to win that trophy so bad. And the Midwest Regional show was on the same weekend my brother Doug got married.
Oh, wow.
And I went to the Midwest Regional. My parents went to the wedding, of course, and I went to the Midwest Regional. It was somewhere in Minnesota, maybe Albert Lee, or
Probably.
that doesn't sound right, but it might have been. But I went to the regional with Wayne and Judy Latch.
Right.
They drove. I think they drove my dad's truck. I don't remember. But we went up there so I could try to win that trophy. I didn't win it. The darn one of the Denny girls won it. I don't remember if it was Susan or I don't remember if it was Susie or Jerry.
Right.
You know, back then you couldn't beat those Denny girls.
Right. And they were well mounted. They had a lot of good POAs.
And when Jerry graduated out, then there was Susie, and Susie was twice as good as Jerry. I mean, and then Cindy came along, and so Susie'd win, Cindy gets second. I mean, it was just could never win. So I missed my brother's wedding.
And you didn't
for
win
a
that
POA
Roy
show.
Latch
And I didn't win. I think I got fifth or something. I was disappointed, but
I know there's people watching tonight who their kids won. I know Dick Schultz won it like in 79 or 80. He was on WHC Ringo Starr. He won it. And of course the DeBoer kids won it, I think. And yeah.
I never got close because I had to ride against too many good girls back then. We could, when they split up the pleasures, so where it was boys and girls.
Right.
Or maybe I don't remember if they split the pleasure or the equitation, one of the two.
Okay.
It was a little easier.
Right.
It seems like when I won on Dingo out in 75 in Estes Park, I don't think I had to show against girls. I don't remember. But
it was probably boys.
Showing against girls was a nightmare.
Well, you mentioned the Griner girls. I remember them barely, but I remember pictures of them. They were beautiful girls, and they were always well mounted too. And
they were tough. Yeah, they were tough. And they were not only good riders; they were tough girls.
They were tough girls.
But they had to be daughters. Russ's daughters, they had to be tough.
Right. There was so many families back then, and so many people had breeding programs. Plus, they were showing, or their kids would age out, and then they'd go into a big breeding program, and a lot of them, just like Doc with Double Tough, his kids aged out, and he just kept on going. Him and his second wife raised POAs right up to a few years ago. So one of the greatest breeders of all time. So, there
was just so many kids. I grew up with a lot of good friends in town and in high school, but my POA friends were every bit as close. Well, Julian was my closest friend. My next closest friend was from Green, but Julian was probably my closest friend growing up. I mean,
right, and he was a POA kid. Right.
We ran together all the time. We skied in the wintertime and messed around, got in trouble in the summertime.
And he ended up in Colorado, and you ended up in Georgia. Isn't it funny how?
Yeah, he worked with me at Hanson's.
Okay.
For I think 2 years. After he got out of college, we stayed in touch while he was still in school at Iowa State, which was just an hour down the road from me. I'd go down and party with him all the time in Ames.
Right.
And then when he got out of college, he came up. Dr. Hanson hired him as my assistant, and we bunked together in a 1-bedroom. It was just a converted garage, I think. I don't know, but we bunked together for probably 2 years.
And you guys were happy as could be. You thought you were really...
Oh, we cut a wide path, I'll tell you. And we were going to Appaloosa shows, and it was big times.
Right. Your brother Chris just said, "Wait, I wasn't your closest friend."
Chris, he didn't latch on to the horse thing. Like, I guess my brother Doug and I were the two that rode the most. I wanted to emulate my brother Doug when I was young.
Right.
He was good. He was good on a horse. He would win at the state fair all the time. He was training horses when he was in college. And he was really good. He was a trick rider at times, and that's why I started trick riding when I I started trick riding when I was down at Salisbury. I did a freestyle one time where I did a bunch of trick riding involved in it. But Doug was an exceptional horseman. Chris just never he didn't latch onto it, I guess, like I did.
Right.
He showed for a few years, and then he went to the pony shows with us, but he kind of stopped showing at some point.
Yeah.
My brother Mike and Doug, they showed at the very first ever International POA show at 58 or 57, I don't remember which
It would have been 59. 59 was
59?
the first one, yeah. 57 was the first sale. Yeah.
They showed at the very first
Wow.
show. In fact, we had a picture for a long time, and I think Doug still has it, of him roping at the POA show. They had roping back then.
A couple weeks from now, I'm going to have an episode called 1959 and Now, and I have a program from the 1959 International Show. If I can find it,
Yeah.
I have it in my collection, but I'm going to have that on here and then talk about the Congress. We're going to kind of push the Congress this year. They changed the name about 10, 12 years ago to Congress. I wasn't for it, but I wasn't on the board or anything then, but they just felt international was, I guess it was dated or whatever. So now it's called the National Congress. But anyway, that podcast is going to be about that 59 show and then about this show now and all the shows. And, there's been this will be the 66th annual show. So that's something they've kept going. That's pretty good for any breed, 66 years. The
Yeah.
World Quarter Horse Show hasn't been around that long. That started in the 70s.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, we've been talking a long time. I knew this would be a good episode, and I can't believe you and I have never spoke. We've written each other, but we've never spoken. I think this podcast is probably one of my favorites. I figured it would be. Is there anything else you want to add or throw in there?
I'm glad we finally got to speak. I remember the story you telling me going with Bud Campbell down to my dad,
right,
and meeting him, and he must have thought a lot of you. Was impressed by you in order to give you that collection he had, because I know that took a lot of years, and not that it was worth a ton of money, but to just
right.
give it to you, that says a lot about you, because Dad was he was a good judge of character. He was a good guy, and boy, he loved the POAs, he loved horses, and I'm glad you got his.
I wish I would have got back there.
Nice.
I was 14 then, so I wish, I don't know how long your dad was around, but that would have been in like 80, I think it was like 87, 86, 87. I wore the covers off most of those sales catalogs, and, now I've got replacements, but a lot of my main magazines in my main collection are still stamped with Jewell on the back of them. So, they're still in my collection. I never got rid of any of them. Some of them wore out because the staples popped out and stuff, because I read every one of them. They're just not for show.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting how you talk about all those numbers in there. He used to have to stop for, I don't know, Harold Slagle
right.
or whoever was reading pedigrees, and they'd go on and on and on, and then the owner would come up and get on the mic and say, "This pony's been uptown, downtown, all around town," and it would go on and on. But I remember clearly I was at the pony sale, and Anna Claire Cheeseborough was back in New York buying. I don't remember what mare it was, but she topped the sale. What would have been in the early 70s.
Was it
and Anna Claire was on the front.
One of the Salty Dew, maybe, or one of those?
I don't remember. Okay. I was young.
Right.
And she's on the phone, and my dad was working the ring. I don't remember who was crying at the time, but my dad was working the ring, and he was on the phone with Anna Claire. And he'd run back, talk to Anna Claire, and get another bid. Come running back up. Wait a minute. I think that was the longest. I took an hour to sell that mare, but she brought a bunch of money for the time. She topped the sale, I'm sure.
Right.
Those pony sales were exciting. They were fun.
Yeah, they were.
They
was
were,
one of my favorite parts of POAs for sure.
They were every bit as fun as the shows. I look forward to the International POA sale every year. Look forward to it.
And I got to mingle with people more at the sale. You just got to.
Everybody was there. Nobody was trying to beat anybody. They were just there.
Right.
They were great times. That was the first time I met Terry Thompson.
Okay.
My good friend
Because he worked for Claire, right?
He worked for Anna Claire,
Yeah,
and he walked into, there was a party at one of the sales in Mason City, and he walked in and kind of made a trip through. Of course, everybody said, "Oh, there's Jerry Thompson." And he wasn't there very long. He was gone, but that's the first I met him, and we're good friends to this day. We're on the phone with each other every day.
Right. He's another great horseman. Yeah. So with some POA contacts too. So, yeah.
And now I have my daughter and my son-in-law who are big in the reining, and
right.
my son is he's worked for two of the most famous working cow horse trainers in the country.
Okay. What's your son's name?
Chris and Sarah Dawson.
Okay.
He worked for Chris and Sarah
Austin Jewell.
Austin
okay.
Jewell.
Okay.
He worked for Chris and Sarah Dawson for a couple of years. He worked for he just finished working a year for Justin Wright out in California.
Okay.
And his brother-in-law and his sister asked him to come help them with their training business. So he's now in Whitesboro working with them, and back to showing reining horses again. And my oldest daughter has 3 boys, and the middle one, he's 14, and he started roping.
Okay.
So we took a horse up to him, and he's team roping now, and I'm thinking about getting a horse and maybe team roping with him.
That's cool.
And Jamie and I have 2 reining horses that we're going to be showing this year. I showed couple weeks ago in Tampa at a Florida reining horse show, and got my feet wet again. After my knee surgery, I hadn't ridden much, and I pretty much quit shoeing horses. I only shoe when Francesco has an emergency.
Okay.
Or Jamie's horse needs shoeing. I got to shoe my wife's horse. So.
Right.
But that's really the only shoeing I do anymore. My hands, the arthritis in my hands won't allow me to do it all the time.
Well, you're at retirement age, so that makes sense. If you were in a normal job, career, you'd be pretty much retiring. So, yeah, Did you have a knee replacement or just a knee surgery?
I did.
Yeah.
When I was at Dr. Hanson's, I was 28 years old, and I had a horse fall while I was shoeing. Fell, and my knee went sideways, and I felt it right then, and I spent the rest of the couple of years limping around on it and hurting on it, and then I really hurt it bad after I'd moved to Georgia, and when I went to work for Brad Johnson, he had me get the cartilage fixed, and at that time they found that I was missing my ACL. So I've been going 2 or 3 years without an ACL.
Wow.
And so I had the cartilage fixed, but I really didn't have time to go through the ACL thing because I was too busy showing horses. And
right.
Then I hurt it even worse, and I had to get the ACL fixed. And then the ACL failed, and I went another 30 years without an ACL. And by that time, I was bone on bone, and I had to get a new knee. So 3 years ago, I got a new knee.
Okay. Well, that's good. That'll change your life, I'm sure. So, what's your son-in-law's name for everybody? That's in the. Go ahead.
Francesco Martinati.
Okay.
He
was on
from
Run
Italy.
for the Million, originally from Italy. And what's your daughter's name that's married to him?
Audrey.
Okay. You have 2 daughters?
Audrey. Ashley is my oldest daughter.
Okay.
And her husband is named Philip, and they have 3 boys, Bo, Cade, and Finn.
Wow, okay.
And then Francesco and Audrey have, their oldest is 6. No, or is he 5? 5 or 6. I guess he's 5. Finn, Ashley's boy, is 6. Finn is 5, and then they just had a girl 2 months ago, and her name is Sylvia Rose.
Oh, wow. What a beautiful name, Sylvia Rose.
And so that's the first granddaughter, 4 grandsons, and now a granddaughter.
She's not going to be spoiled at all.
Not at all. She already has 5 closets of clothes, I tell you.
You need to buy her a pony. Upset things a little bit. Buy her a POA. So.
I'm always looking for I'd like to have a POA that I could train to go to the Rainings for my for Finn, or not Finn, excuse me, for Leonardo. That's Audrey's boy.
Okay.
Finn has a POA that he rides right now at the junior rodeos with his brother Cade.
Okay.
He rides it in the barrels and the poles and the goat untying. It's a little white pony.
Okay.
They call him Sheik. My sister-in-laws, they rode a pony called Kiowa Sheik.
I remember him.
That they showed when they were in the POAs. And this pony, my mother-in-law came across, and he looks a lot like Kiowa Sheik, so they call him Sheik. And now he's Finn's pony. And he and Ashley and Cade Cade rides the reining mare that we took down to him that he's made into a rope horse, and they go to the junior rodeos now.
That's cool. Well, that just kind of tied the whole story in together there, didn't it?
I'd like to find a POA that I could put some reining moves on and take it for Leonardo. I call him Pickle. I'm the only one that calls him Pickle, but I'd like for him to have a POA reiner is what I'd like.
Right. Well, they've bred to reining horses. You know, they breed to Pleasure got big in POAs about 20 years ago. Well, it's always been there, but I mean, you know, the Impulse horses were bred into POAs a lot because they were shorter quarter horses.
Yeah.
You know, and then
go
ahead.
I had that Black Velvet pony. He was my reining pony.
Right.
And when the NRHA started back in the 60s, we used to show a lot of open shows, and my brother would ride an Appaloosa horse in the reining, and I'd ride that POA, and lots of times I'd beat him. And at one show in Mason City, we entered the reining, and I won. My brother was in it. I think he was third, and there was a bunch of adults with quarter horses. And I remember they called my dad up to the office, and he came back, and he had to take the trophy back. Of course, I was crying because I got my trophy taken away.
Right.
But the newly established NRHA, that was an NRHA class. My pony was not in the NRHA, and so I was ineligible to be in that class. Oh. So that Black Velvet horse, he for his time, I won a lot of reining, POA reining on. A lot of them.
Right. Well, a lot of Ray's stuff had a lot of horse in them too. You know, a lot of quarter horse and he bred Appaloosa and quarter horse into his POAs way back. You know, he pushed the limit sometimes, but when it was 54, but he helped change the breed too by doing that.
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah.
You mentioned Slagles earlier. You know, they bought that Driftwood's Misfire and then bred her and got Hive Avatar, and he changed POAs and a lot.
Paul Slagle was and that's another name back in my era. He was one of those, as far as a rider, as a boy, you know, it's so hard to beat the girls, but it was almost impossible to beat Paul. I forget what his pony's name was, but Tomahawk something.
Tomahawk's Big Creek, and then they had Son of Him, High View, yeah.
Whatever, with the pony that Paul rode, what Paul showed was a fantastic. He'd do everything.
Didn't they have Pintner's Siri Frost or something like that, or something was a blanketed horse? I don't know.
I don't remember the names. I'm not good with the old names of ponies, but
Chris just mentioned Jackie Nemers and Joe Bar. Of course, Joe Bar was way ahead of his time.
way ahead.
Yeah, he was like a horse. Yeah, he was a grand champion, and he could do all kinds of stuff. Yeah. There
were two ponies that in the barrels and poles you just couldn't beat. One of them was going to win it. Susie Denny and Shoto, or the Nemers girls with Joe Bar.
Joe Bar, yeah. Wow.
Those were the two best barrel and pole ponies I ever saw.
Yeah.
Shoto was, he just never wasted a step, and that Joe Bar was the same way.
Joe Bar should be in the Hall of Fame. He's not, but he should be. But Shoto's in the Hall of Fame. I did the international research. Yeah, he won 54 classes, not counting maybe some equitation and stuff even. But yeah, he won 54 international show titles. Shoto did. So that was something, he wasn't that great a looking horse maybe, but he
wasn't pretty at all.
No,
he wasn't pretty at all.
He wasn't pretty.
Susie thought he was pretty, but he was just a great pony.
Right. And the Denny girls are still up in Kansas with their granddaughters, and they yell when they come out in the games at the Sunflower Classic shows. They call them, they're whooping and hollering, and they have a good time. Yeah. So, well, Kevin, we've been talking for 2.5 hours, hours, 2 hours, I guess. It's 8:38, so it's 9:38 your time. But I would talk till midnight. I'm having fun, but I might have to have you back for a part 2 or something. So
everybody else probably already gone to bed, hung up, got tired.
No, people are commenting. Tracy's really commenting, and so is a lot of other people. Your brother's been very gracious mentioning names and stuff, and a lot of Iowa people are commenting. Dean,
my brother.
Go ahead.
My brother Chris, he can remember names way better than I can.
He's popping some names. Yeah, he's.
Oh yeah, he can remember them.
Yeah. And see, that's how I was either blessed or cursed. I can remember names, and it's people I never met, like you and stuff. So some of these stories you're telling me, and I used to be a sponge, like I mentioned Carl, and you mentioned Dr. Edinburgh. When those guys would tell stories, I'd just sit there like around a campfire, and just listen. I wouldn't open my mouth. And then I'd just sponge it all in, and some of it was maybe make-believe, but most 99% of it was true. So, yeah, cool story.
Well, I thank Les Boomhauer for creating the breed, and I thank my parents for finding them. Of course, they were there close, and they got in on the start because the POA breed was an amazing way to grow up, and it formulated my life to what it is today. I'll tell you.
Right. Yeah. That's a good way to tie it all together. They were early members if they were at that first show. I know Murfelds were the 9th members. They always advertised that. They were the 9th members in POAs, and then they stayed in it, very active till the early 80s. And then Doug came back with his wife Tracy, and they showed again when he was, retired even from auctioneering and stuff. He showed when he was in his 60s and 70s. So, and raised some POAs back there in Marble Rock. So, all right, Kevin. Well, is there anything else you want to add or anything you want to plug? This is your time right now. You got an audience. This will probably get 600-700 views total. So we're kind of big fish in a small pond, but we got a lot of people watch. So.
Oh, I don't have anything to plug. That's for sure. At this stage of my career, I just try to keep my nose clean and do the right thing.
Well, I was like a little kid when the, Run for a Million show come on, The Last Cowboy or whatever the official name is. But, my wife, we've been married 10 years now, and she wasn't around when I was in POAs back then. But, I'm like, that's Kevin Jewell, and she's like, who's that? And I'm like, well, and then I start telling her stories. I said, I've never met the man, but, him and Julian Nemmers and guys like that, I've always, looked up to them because they were POA kids that went out and made it good in horses, in the horse industry. So,
well, the Run for a Million will be in August. We'll be there. Francesco's qualified, and my daughter Audrey, she's going to try to qualify for the non-pro end of it, and she's got a nice horse. She'll probably, well, hopefully she'll qualify, and so the two of them will be showing out there, and cool. Cheer them on.
They're still filming. They're probably still filming again, for another season.
Yeah. They're at the NRBC right now in Tulsa.
Okay.
I'm headed there next week, so to cheer on it. Hopefully Francesco will be in the finals of the Derby, and plus it's a big horse show, and I like to go see those big man shows.
Right.
I can't judge them. Because Francesco and Austin and Audrey are always showing at them. I can't judge the big ones. I can only judge where they don't go.
Yeah, the south west, or east. I mean, you can judge there.
Southeast or the northwest or the northeast.
Yeah.
I get up to New York, and I'm going to Nebraska this next month.
Okay.
So yeah, I get my share of judgment. I just don't get to do the big one.
Because you're too connected. You're too tied in. Well, I'm going to keep throwing your name in the POA hat. So I'm judging
right.
POA shows now, too. I finally got my card last year. So, I waited because now the POAs I raised, they're getting older, and I haven't owned a POA in 10 years. So, yeah.
Well, hopefully we can do one together sometime.
Yeah, that'd be cool. We'd have to make sure we don't start talking about stuff like this. We got to wait till after 5 or after the show's over. So, all right, Kevin. Well, it was sure a pleasure and an honor to have you as a guest tonight. You made a great podcast. This was episode 82. So, if I would have known it was this good a show, you would have been on episode 1 or 2. So, but
well, it was my honor.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin.
Keep up the good work, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being on here. You have a good night.
Good night to you.
All right. Thanks. All right, everybody. That was Kevin Jewell from Georgia. Of course, he grew up in Greene, Iowa, in the POAs. His dad was a pretty well-known auctioneer. I will post some more pictures. There's a cool picture of his parents and him and his brother Chris in front of the tote board in Iowa. Might have been in Marshalltown. It was in Marshalltown for 3 years in between Mason City and Des Moines. So I hope you guys enjoyed all those stories. I know I sure did. I just was sitting here. I'm the host, so I had to add in my 2 cents once in a while. But when you're around people like that, that's how I grew up, around guys, like his dad and people like that I just sponged off of. And, of course, Kevin's made his career being a horseman, and he mentioned Julian Emmers a lot. And I've met Julian a few times because Doc was such a close friend to our family that I actually did get to meet Julian. And, of course, he mentioned Kathy went with him to that one show. I knew Kathy pretty well. She'd been to our place in Minnesota several times, and her sister Jackie, of course. I was really good friends with Jackie. She was like Doc's right-hand man for a long time there when he was raising the double tough POAs in the 80s. So, yep, great show tonight. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. We've got a lot of good feedback. We are going to go to the pictures really quick to end. I got to give Tracy her due. Tracy Sweet Keen in Florida is our sponsor tonight, and we did show her pictures. There's Kevin with Chico's Amacuti. He said he named her. That was a cool story. So we really got to hear some cool stories again, like I said, and we're going to get to There We Are Live. I've never seen that happen before, but that was cool to see that. So we're just scrolling here. And remember why I'm scrolling for this? My wife Monica, my beautiful wife Monica, is at home waiting for sponsorships. We still have 60-some classes. May 20th is the end of the sponsorship, the deadline for the Congress. We have 160-some sponsored, but we still have a lot more to go. So get your sponsorships in, please. It's only $150 a class. So tonight, our sponsor for my POA podcast, Black Hand and Beyond, is, of course, TC POAs and TC Impulsive Weedo. This guy right here. Of course, he is an ID POA, but Tracy knows color, so she crosses him to get colors like this. This is one of her latest babies. This is TC Small Town Weedo, and he is a colt. Tracy said if he would have been a filly, she had a list for him, but he is a colt, so he is still available. And he, of course, is a full brother to a lot of the great ones that Tracy's raised by TC Impulsive Weedo, including, Touched by a Weedo, Weedo, I think Need No Luck, that one, Weedos and Roses, or Weeds and Roses, Forever a Weedo. All those, I believe, are full siblings to this guy. So another loud-colored, nice-looking colt from Tracy's program. Of course, this is Lori Gregory, with One and Only Weedo. Remember that one last year at the Futurity, top 5, really loud colored, nice built baby. And then we have Shannon Killian here with TC Forever a Weedo. I just mentioned that one is a full sibling to the baby. And then, of course, the superstar of the group so far has been TC Touched by a Weedo. And, of course, that's Lindsay Peaton from Arizona, the national champion, a lot of things at High Point, of course. So a lot of great TC POAs over the years with the East Acres or Doc's Tough Tiger and a lot of East Acres double tough mares. And then Tracy's just kept it going, of course, over the years with now TC Impulsive Weedo. Right here is him. And, of course, look up his pedigree. If you don't know his pedigree, go tonight to pedigree base and look it up, and you'll see why she's having such a good time in Florida selling his babies. And then she with her few spot mares and color producing mares, she's getting colors like this. So they're not all leopards. She's getting some nice blankets too. So thank you to Tracy for being the sponsor tonight, her and Robert down in Florida. And again, I want to thank Kevin Jewell for agreeing to be on this show. He's a very busy man still, even in his 60s. He's going, and then of course his daughter and son-in-law is showing. Like he said, he was in Scottsdale all the way from Georgia at that show, and then he was in the Dominican Republic judging shows there. And so he still gets around, and I didn't get to talk to him till tonight. So tonight was the first time I ever spoke to him live, and we did that like 5 minutes before we got on the air. I was almost late getting on the air tonight because this is a funny story I got to end the show with, a POA story. A guy from service comes up to me, one of our advisors, and he goes, "Are you going to be around tonight? You're usually the last one here." And he had a key in his hand and some paperwork, and I said, "Well, my podcast is tonight. Technically, I'm off at 5, but I'll be at 6:15, I'll be unavailable." And he's like, "Well, this is one of your customers." And he flipped the paperwork over, and it was Lynetta Puffenberger in a Ram truck she bought from me a few years ago, her and her husband Ross. And anyway, it had some work done. And they were in Oklahoma City, and they didn't want to drive back from Cherokee tomorrow. So I was still out there. It was about 10 after when she pulled up, and I had to take a check from her because our service department closed at 6. And somebody said, "You're going to be late for your podcast." And I said, "Well, her dad's the reason I'm in Oklahoma anyway, Lynn Puffenberger, so I can be late to the podcast for that." We weren't too late, and I'm glad everybody watched tonight. Next week is the Great Trailer Race of 1984, and that's about the yearling colts that were born in 1983, and then they were yearling stud colts in 84, and I'll talk about the points they earned and some of the stories. We may even have a special guest for that one. I haven't contacted anybody yet, but that'll be a fun episode to watch, a little different. I still do need a sponsor for that. Of course, we do the $50 sponsorships, and we can have a couple of those, or if you want to be the sole sponsor like Tracy was tonight, and we've had other Lexi Lou and Bronze Performance Horses, Jan Rogers last week. That's $60 if you're the sole sponsor and I don't have anybody else and don't show any other pictures for a sponsor. So I am looking for somebody for next week. That'll be the 23rd. And then the last episode of April will be the 18th episode of the year. That will be 1959, and now it's called. Special guests will be Ella and her mom Ashley from Edmond. Silver Wind Stables will be the sponsor of that episode, and they'll actually be here live, barring any scheduling conflicts. They will be sitting in here in the studio with me, and we'll have a split screen, and we'll have just a lot of cool things going on that night. I imagine we'll talk about more than the International Show of 59 and the Congress of 2024. We'll probably talk about briars and all kinds of things with Ella. So that will be episode 84, as I said, in 2 weeks. That'll be April 30th. So next week will be the 23rd. That's the Great Trailer Race of 84. We do have the Cutest Foal contest coming up as well. I announced that on Facebook. Go check for that. That's $5 a baby. And a lot of the things we do here is free, but some things I just charge to keep it real. And, that's only $5 and your baby gets to be on here. I talk all about it. And then I have some non-POA person, but usually with horse experience, judge the cuteness, and the top 10 get really highlighted. But if you enter it, your baby picture will be on Facebook. And it's not a halter contest. They do have to be eligible to be a registered POA. They don't have to be registered yet, but they do have to be eligible. And this year, a 2024 baby. So that show will air towards the end of June. So June 15th is the deadline. So, all right, again, thank you to Tracy for sponsoring. Thank you to all the people who watched tonight and all the comments. And again, to our special guest, Kevin Jewell, great horseman from Georgia. Tell all your friends about this one. It'll be on Facebook forever, and it'll be on YouTube here pretty quick as soon as Monica puts it on YouTube. Most of the episodes are on YouTube on the POA History channel, so go watch that too. Again, all the episodes are on Facebook to watch on this, what you're on right now, the POA History group. So, Again, this is Kent Rourke with my POA podcast, Black Hand and Beyond. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Enjoy the song. See you next week.